Welcome to the podcast. I hope you enjoy my stories. Today's episode is Red Shirt by James Byron Love. Copyright 2026. All rights reserved. Now let's get into this funny sci-fi story. The briefing room of the Meridian smelled, as it always did, of recycled air and Thaler Quinn's terrible coffee. And Captain Fred Stone stood at the head of the table with the particular expression he wore when he was about to ask something that someone in the room was not going to like. "All right, listen up," Stone said, pulling up the planetary display and letting the slow blue rotation of Zephyria fill the center of the table like a prop in a very bad dream. "We have a situation. Planet Zephyria's communications array has gone offline, and we have approximately 30 minutes before we lose orbital alignment, and our sensor grid goes dark. Someone needs to go down there, find the fault in the array, fix it, and come back. Simple mission, clear objective, and I don't want to be here all day discussing it." Karyna Tesla, who was seated at the far end of the table with her arms folded, and the expression of someone who had already decided how this conversation was going to go, said, "I'm not going." Stone looked at her the way he always looked at her when she said this, which was the look of a man who had been issued a headache along with his command and had simply learned to manage it. "Tesla, I haven't finished the briefing. You said someone needs to go down to the planet," Karyna said. "I'm clarifying early that the someone is not me, so we can all save time and move on to identifying which of these other fine people is going to go instead." Science Officer Delira Vex, who was sitting to Stone's left with a PADD full of atmospheric readings, looked up briefly and then looked back down, which was her standard response to the opening stages of this particular argument. Engineer Thaler Quinn, who was sitting across from Karyna with his terrible coffee, said, "We haven't even gotten to the dangerous part yet." "There's a planet," Karyna said. "That's the dangerous part. Everything after that is just details." Stone set both hands on the table in the manner of a man exercising considerable patience and said, "Tesla, the surface temperature is a comfortable 18 degrees, the atmosphere is fully breathable, and the communications array is a standard Federation installation that Thaler could fix in his sleep." "Then send Thaler," Karyna said immediately. "I need Thaler on shuttle support," Stone said. "Then send Delira," Karyna said loudly. "I need Delira on science," Stone said. "Then send yourself, Captain, and I'll watch from up here and provide moral support," Karyna said. Stone straightened up and looked at her for a long moment. "Do you know, Tesla, that in 3 years aboard this ship you have not once gone on an away mission? Not once. Every other member of this crew has logged away mission hours. Every single one. You have logged exactly 0. And I am extremely healthy," Karyna said. "Funny how that works." "What's funny," Stone said, "is that you are a security and engineering specialist whose entire function on this ship includes exactly the kind of ground assessment that this mission requires. And somehow every time we need someone to do that job you are either busy, unwell, or apparently planning to be in jail." Karyna pointed at him. "That is a very good segue actually, because I was going to get to jail." Thaler put his coffee down. "Why are we getting to jail?" "Because," Karyna said, "the captain is about to tell me that refusing a direct order is a court-martial offense, and I want to get ahead of it by saying that yes, I know, and I have thought about this very carefully, and my considered position is that a court-martial is something that happens to you while you are alive, whereas what happens to people who go down to planets in red shirts is something that happens to you while you are extremely and permanently dead. And given the choice between those two outcomes, I will take the court-martial every single time without hesitation." Stone stared at her. "I haven't threatened a court-martial yet." "You are getting there," she said smugly. "I was getting to the mission parameters," Stone said. "You were getting to the court-martial," Karyna said, "and we both know it, and I just wanted you to know that it's not going to work, and that I have actually looked into what the accommodations are like in a Starfleet detention facility, and they are not that bad. And more importantly, nobody in a detention facility has ever been killed by an alien drone or an unstable atmospheric phenomenon or whatever Zephyria is going to turn out to have. And so I am genuinely, completely. And I cannot stress this enough, entirely unbothered by the threat." Delira looked up from her PADD again. "Technically, the atmospheric readings do show some unusual energy fluctuations in the area around the array." "Thank you, Delira," Karyna said. "I was saying it as a concern that could be addressed with proper equipment," Delira said. "And I'm receiving it as confirmation that the planet is trying to kill someone," Karyna said. "We're both getting something out of it." Stone pulled out a chair and sat down, which was never a good sign because it meant he was settling in. Tesla, let me explain something to you about how a career in Starfleet works, since yours appears to have stalled somewhere around the rank you held when you boarded this ship 3 years ago. I'm aware of my rank, Captain," said. Crewman third class, Stone said, in the tone of someone reading a medical diagnosis. In 3 years. Do you know where Ensign Marsh was 3 years ago? Ensign Rico Marsh, who was sitting 2 seats down from Karyna with the bright attentive expression of someone who had not yet learned that bright attentive expressions in briefing rooms led to away missions, looked up at the sound of his name. Marsh was in his second year at the Academy 3 years ago, Stone continued, and he has already been promoted twice since joining this crew, and the difference between you and Marsh, Tesla, is not ability, because you are frankly one of the most capable people on this ship, and it is not intelligence, and it is not work ethic, because your on-ship performance reviews are excellent. It is simply that Marsh goes where he is sent, and you stand in this briefing room every single time and tell me you are not going. And I'm still here, Karyna said. Alive. Add crewman third class. Which is a rank that, while not glamorous, is one that I hold while breathing, which is more than can be said for several people in this fleet who were promoted very quickly and are no longer with us. Marsh leaned forward slightly. I'll go, Captain. I don't mind. Karyna turned to look at him with an expression that was somewhere between pity and horror. Of course you don't mind, she said. You never mind. That's the whole problem with you, Marsh. You are 23 years old and you have had 2 successful away missions, and now you think the universe has decided to be nice to you personally, which is exactly the kind of thinking that the universe finds absolutely hilarious right before it stops being nice. I've been on 6 away missions, Marsh said with some dignity. 6, Karyna said. 6 missions and you're still in one piece, and somewhere in your head you have decided that this means you are good at away missions rather than that you have been very, very lucky. And I say this with genuine warmth because I have nothing against you personally, Marsh. I just have a great deal against the statistical pattern that you are currently embodying with tremendous enthusiasm. What statistical pattern? Marsh asked. Karyna gestured at her own uniform. What color is this shirt? Marsh looked at it. Red. And what color is your shirt? Karyna asked. Marsh looked down. Also red. Correct, Karyna said. And I want you to think very carefully about every story you have ever heard about someone in a red shirt going on an away mission, and what tends to happen to them at the end of it. Marsh opened his mouth and then closed it again. Take your time, Karyna said. That's a completely unscientific generalization, Delira said, though she said it in the tone of someone who had privately done the math and found it uncomfortable. I have a spreadsheet, Karyna said. Stone rubbed his eyes. You have a spreadsheet. A very detailed one, Karyna said. 5 years of Meridian away mission data, cross-referenced by uniform color, mission type, planetary classification, and outcome. I update it after every mission. I can send it to anyone who wants it. Thaler, you want it? I have seen it, Thaler said. She has sent it to me 4 times. Because the data keeps being relevant, Karyna said. Stone stood up again, which meant the sitting down phase of his patience had expired. Tesla, I am going to be very direct with you. This mission requires a security and engineering specialist on the ground. You are the most qualified person for that role on this ship. I am ordering you, as your commanding officer, to suit up and join the away team. And if you refuse that order, I will have no choice but to begin formal disciplinary proceedings, up to and including a court-martial. And I want you to understand that I am not saying this to threaten you. I am saying it because it is the actual consequence of what you are describing. The briefing room was quiet for a moment. Okay, Karyna said. So here is what I want you to understand, Captain, and I mean this with complete respect for your rank and your authority and your very impressive record of command. A court-martial takes, several weeks minimum. Hearings, proceedings, formal charges, the whole process. And during all of those weeks I will be on this ship in this room drinking whatever passes for coffee when Thaler isn't hoarding the good stuff, and I will be alive, which is a condition I have become extremely attached to, and a court-martial, whatever else it is not something that ends with me being dissolved by an energy weapon on the surface of a planet that nobody outside this sector has ever heard of. And so yes, Captain, court-martial me, please, I will wait right here. Stone looked at her for a long time. Then he looked at Thaler. Then he looked at Delira. Then he looked at Marsh, who was still quietly processing the spreadsheet information. I'll go, Marsh said again, apparently having processed it and arrived at the wrong conclusion. Marsh, Karyna said, in a voice that had gone slightly gentler than the rest of the conversation. I genuinely like you as a person and I am asking you, one red shirt to another, to think about what I just said. I think the pattern you're describing is a coincidence, Marsh said, though he said it slightly less certainly than he would have said it 10 minutes ago. A coincidence, Karyna repeated. 14 away missions with casualties on this ship in the last 5 years. 11 of the people who didn't come back were in red shirts. You want to tell me what the confidence interval is on that coincidence, Delira? Delira was quiet for a moment that lasted slightly too long. I'm not going to do that, she said finally. Because the number is uncomfortable, Karyna said. Because it's not a statistically controlled sample, Delira said, in the tone of someone who had definitely already calculated it. Delira, Karyna said. Delira looked at her PADD. The confidence interval is fairly high, she said quietly. Thank you, Karyna said. Stone held up a hand. None of this changes the operational reality that we need someone on that surface in the next 20 minutes or we lose sensor alignment, and I need it to be a qualified specialist. And you are the most qualified specialist on this ship, Tesla, and I need you to get up from that chair and go and do your job. Karyna looked at him. She looked at Marsh, who was now frowning thoughtfully at his own sleeve. She looked at Thaler, who had the expression of someone who wanted to say something supportive, but kept arriving at things that would accidentally take a side. She looked at Delira, who was looking at her atmospheric readings with great concentration. I would like to formally note, Karyna said, that this conversation is going exactly the way every conversation like it goes, and that the outcome of those conversations is documented in a spreadsheet that I have offered to share with the entire senior staff, and that my position has not changed and will not change, and that Ensign Marsh, who is young and capable and has a very good future ahead of him if he survives the next several years, has volunteered. And that I think the correct decision here is to let him go and to let me stay here and monitor the sensor feeds from the ship, where I will be genuinely useful and also not dead. Stone looked at her for a very long moment. Then he said, in the flat, measured tone of a man accepting a situation he could not currently change, fine. Marsh, you're on ground engineering. Delira, science lead. Thaler, shuttle support. Tesla, you're on sensor monitoring from the ship. And if I find out you left your station for so much as a cup of coffee while this mission is running, I will personally write the court-martial paperwork myself. I will be at that station until Marsh is back on this ship, Karyna said. You have my word. Marsh stood up and straightened his red shirt and smiled at Karyna with the easy confidence of someone who had not yet learned to be afraid of the right things. You worry too much, he said. Karyna looked at him. One of us does, she said. The sensor station on Deck 4 had, over 3 years, become less of a workstation and more of a carefully constructed argument for why Karyna Tesla should never have to leave it. She had a chair she had personally reupholstered in the specific firmness required for long-duration monitoring sessions. She had a secondary console liberated from a storage bay 14 months ago and configured for parallel data analysis. She had a snack drawer whose existence she had disclosed to nobody, on the grounds that the snacks were not a luxury but a load-bearing component of the survival protocol, and she had 7 sensor windows arranged in a configuration that allowed her to watch everything the Meridian could see without moving her head more than 15 degrees in any direction. It was, in her professional opinion, the perfect setup for a person who intended to stay alive indefinitely. The shuttle left the bay at 0842, and Karyna watched it go on the primary feed, with the deep and specific satisfaction of someone who had made all the correct decisions this morning, and was now watching other people make different ones. Shuttle is away, Thaler said over the comm. Descending through upper atmosphere, all systems nominal. Wonderful, Karyna said, opening the snack drawer and retrieving a protein bar of the good variety. Those are my protein bars, by the way. Those are my protein bars, Thaler said immediately. The label said Thaler's, Karyna said, which I interpreted as a dedication rather than a warning, like a park bench with someone's name on it. You don't refuse to sit on it just because someone put their name on it. That analogy makes no sense, Thaler said. It makes complete sense, Karyna said. Delira, what are the Sector 7 readings? Energy fluctuations present but not increasing, Delira said, with the calm precision of someone reading from a clipboard. Nothing that should cause concern at this stage. Karyna, who had been running a cross-reference on the Sector 7 frequency pattern against the Meridian's historical atmospheric database since before the shuttle launched, because that was the kind of person she was and had been for 3 years, said, not increasing and not concerning are 2 entirely different categories of fine, and I would like that distinction logged before we go any further. Logged, Stone said from the bridge, in the tone of a man who had learned that logging things was faster than arguing about whether they needed logging. Thank you, Karyna said. Hello, future inquiry board. Nobody, Stone said, is convening an inquiry board. They never are, Karyna said, until they are. Marsh's voice came over the channel with the cheerful momentum of someone who had decided, before he got out of bed, that today was going to be a good day, and had so far found nothing to contradict this. Surface contact in 4 minutes, Marsh said. Visibility is excellent, terrain looks completely clear. I've already got the array on my scanner and the fault signature is consistent with a straightforward relay coupling failure. This is going to be a very clean mission. Karyna put down the protein bar. Marsh, she said. I know, Marsh said. Straightforward is banned. You also said clean, Karyna said. Clean is banned too, Marsh said agreeably. The universe heard both of them, Karyna said. It's making notes right now. Stone logged that he said straightforward and clean in the same sentence. I'm not logging vocabulary, Stone said. I'll do it myself, Karyna said, and opened her mission log and typed it in with the efficiency of someone who had been doing this for 3 years and had a system. Marsh landed 4 minutes later, and his helmet camera came online, and Karyna pulled it up on her primary feed and watched him step out onto the gray Zephyrian surface and set off toward the array with the long, easy stride of someone who had done this 6 times and come back every time, and had therefore arrived at the catastrophically incorrect conclusion that coming back was simply what happened. She pulled up the Sector 7 scanner on her secondary console and began cross-referencing the live readings against the frequency pattern she had flagged from the survey archive. Because the cross-reference had been running for 11 minutes and the shuttle had been gone for 14, and the preliminary results were the kind of preliminary results that made a person open additional monitoring windows. Thaler, she said on the private engineering channel, I want to share something with you and I need you to receive it calmly. That's never a good opening, Thaler said. Footnote 9, Karyna said, subsection 12, Federation Survey Archive for this sector, logged 14 years ago, 3 Class 4 Zephyrian perimeter installations in this region, none of them listed as decommissioned. The silence that followed had a specific texture to it, the texture of a person doing rapid mental arithmetic and not enjoying the results. Karyna, Thaler said slowly. Yes, Karyna said. Why didn't you flag this before we left, Thaler said. The cross-reference takes 11 minutes, Karyna said. The shuttle left 14 minutes ago. I'm flagging it now, which is the earliest I could have flagged it, and I want that timeline documented because I can see how this looks, and I need it on record that I ran the cross-reference at the earliest possible opportunity. Stone, this is the flag. I heard the flag, Stone said. Delira, what's your assessment of the Sector 7 frequency? Almost certainly residual interference from the array malfunction itself, Delira said. The signature is consistent with that interpretation. Almost certainly, Karyna said. Yes, Delira said. You keep using almost certainly, Karyna said, and I need you to understand that almost certainly and definitely are separated by a gap that people fall into, and that the people who fall into it are statistically likely to be wearing red shirts, and that Marsh is currently walking toward a potentially active defense installation wearing a red shirt. The installation is almost certainly dormant, Delira said, with slightly less certainty than she had said the previous almost certainly. Marsh, Karyna said on the engineering channel, how close are you to the array? About 200 meters, Marsh said, with the easy confidence of a man 8 minutes from a completed mission. Fault is reading exactly like I expected, primary relay coupling. I can have this fixed and be back on the shuttle before you've finished worrying about it. I will never finish worrying about it, Karyna said. That's not how my worrying works. My worrying is not a finite resource. It is a renewable one, and it renews approximately every 30 seconds when I am watching someone in a red shirt walk toward a potentially active defense installation. Keep your exit route clear. My exit route is always clear, Marsh said. Keep it clearer than that, Karyna said. Karyna, Marsh said, with the warm, patient tone of someone who had decided to find her endearing rather than exhausting, which she appreciated even as it drove her absolutely insane. I have been on this mission for 16 minutes and you have expressed concern approximately every 90 seconds, which is 11 concerns, and I want you to know I have been tracking all of them and taking each one seriously. The 12th concern is that the Sector 7 reading just went up 2 points, Karyna said. A silence fell over the comm channel with the specific weight of a silence that meant people were looking at data they had been hoping would look different. Toolkit interference, Delira said after a moment. He's within range of the array. His scanner is interacting with the local electromagnetic field. It's the most likely explanation. Most likely, Karyna said. Yes, Delira said. Not almost certainly, Karyna said. Another pause. No, Delira said quietly. Not almost certainly. Karyna watched the Sector 7 reading and watched Marsh's helmet feed simultaneously and said nothing, because she had said everything there was to say and Marsh was already crouching in front of the array access panel with his toolkit open, working with the fast, precise efficiency of someone who was, whatever else she thought about his life choices, genuinely and undeniably excellent at his job. The Sector 7 reading ticked up another half point and held there. Karyna watched it the way you watched something you were hoping would decide to go in a different direction. It held for 90 seconds. Then it dropped a point. Then another. Then it was back at baseline, and the relief that moved through Karyna's chest was the specific relief of someone who had been correct about the risk and incorrect about the outcome, and was profoundly grateful to be wrong in exactly that order. Array is stable, Marsh said, with the quiet satisfaction of a craftsman finishing a clean piece of work. Fault-corrected relay coupling replaced, reading full function across all channels. 7 minutes 50. Outstanding work, Stone said. Return to shuttle. Mission complete. On my way, Marsh said, and even through the comm filter Karyna could hear the grin. She retrieved the second protein bar from the back of the drawer, the one she reserved for missions that ended correctly, and ate it with the deliberate appreciation of someone marking a specific occasion. Marsh came back through the shuttle bay doors 20 minutes later and found Karyna at her station exactly where she had told him she would be, which appeared to surprise him mildly despite the fact that she had been extremely clear about it. Still alive, he announced, leaning in the doorframe with the grin operating at full capacity. I have logged it, Karyna said without looking up from her console. 7 missions, Marsh said, pushing off the doorframe and dropping into the empty chair beside her station with the easy comfort of someone who had decided this was a place he was welcome, which Karyna had never explicitly confirmed but had also never disputed. 7 missions, all successful, everyone comes back, and yet the spreadsheet grows. The spreadsheet grows because data grows, Karyna said. That's what data does. It accumulates until it means something. What's it going to mean, Marsh said. I don't know yet, Karyna said. That's why I keep collecting it. Marsh looked at her for a moment with the easy expression of someone who had no particular reason to be anything other than easy, and then he said, You know what your problem is, Karyna. I have a file on that too, Karyna said. Your problem, Marsh said, ignoring this, is that you are so focused on the things that could go wrong that you don't leave any room for the things that go right. 7 missions, Karyna said. 11 casualties in 5 years. 12 if you count Ensign Priya on the Vega station detail, which I do even though it was technically classified as an accident. The spreadsheet has room for both. Marsh was quiet for a moment, and then he said in a slightly different tone than the one he had been using, You count them all, don't you? Every one, Karyna said. He didn't say anything after that, and she didn't either, and after a moment he got up and headed for the corridor, and she listened to his footsteps until she couldn't hear them anymore. Then she opened her mission log and typed Mission 48, away team returned intact, all personnel accounted for, Sector 7 anomaly resolved without incident, defense installation did not activate, Marsh returned safely. She paused with her hands over the console. Then she typed, He asked what the spreadsheet is going to mean. I don't have an answer for that yet. I hope I never do. I am aware that hope is not a survival protocol. She saved the file. She opened a new one, labeled it Watch This, and saved the Sector 7 frequency data into it. Then she straightened her red shirt and sat back in her chair and waited for the next briefing, because there was always a next briefing, and when it came she was going to be ready for it, which was the only thing she knew how to be. Captain Fred Stone walked into the briefing room and found Karyna Tesla already seated at the table with a PADD, a laminated card that he was fairly certain said Survival Protocol Version 9 in bold letters at the top, and what appeared to be a small framed photograph of the Meridian that she had positioned in front of her like a shrine. What is the photograph for? Stone said because he could not stop himself. Motivation, Karyna said. This is where I live. This is what I am protecting. Every morning I look at this photograph and I say to myself, Karyna, you are on that ship, and that ship is not a planet, and planets are where people go to die, and you are not going to a planet today, and it centers me. Stone sat down. You have been here 20 minutes. I have been here 23 minutes, Karyna said, because I read the mission brief last night and I needed extra time to prepare my materials, which include the laminated card, an updated version of the slide, 2 new graphs, a footnote summary, and a formal written objection that I have already filed with the ship's administrative system so it is time-stamped and on the record before you say a single word. Stone looked at the ceiling briefly in the manner of a man having a private conversation with whatever force governed his life. The briefing hasn't started. I know, Karyna said pleasantly, I'm just very ready for it. Thaler came in, looked at the framed photograph of the ship, looked at Karyna, looked at Stone, and sat down at the opposite end of the table with the careful movements of a man who had learned to give certain situations a wide perimeter. Is that a shrine? Thaler said. It's a motivational display, Karyna said. It has a little candle next to it, Thaler said. It's a very small candle, Karyna said. It's symbolic. You cannot have open flames on a starship, Stone said. It's a battery-operated candle, Karyna said. I'm not an idiot, I'm trying to survive. Delira walked in, registered the shrine, made a note on her PADD that she did not share with the room, and sat down. Marsh came in last, spotted the shrine immediately, pointed at it, and said, Is that new? I feel like that's new. Did you add the candle since last time? With the delight of someone who had been following this as an ongoing project and was genuinely interested in its development. The candle is new, Karyna confirmed. Version 9 of the protocol includes a daily centering ritual. What were versions 1 through 8? Marsh asked, sitting down next to her with every indication that he wanted a full answer. Version 1 was just refusing to go on away missions, Karyna said. Version 2 was refusing and also documenting. Version 3 was refusing, documenting, and cross-referencing with historical casualty data. Version 4 introduced the spreadsheet. Version 5 introduced the slide. Version 6 was when I added the secondary console on Deck 4. Version 7 was the snack drawer, which is load-bearing to the whole system because you cannot maintain vigilance on an empty stomach. Version 8 introduced the watch this file system. Version 9 is the shrine and the centering ritual. What's version 10 going to be? Marsh asked. I'm hoping I never need a version 10, Karyna said, but if I do it involves a second framed photograph and possibly a small rug. Stone held up a hand. If everyone is quite finished discussing the interior decorating of Karyna's psychological fortress, the relay station on grid reference 77 Alpha has gone completely dark, and we need to send a team to assess and repair it. No, Karyna said immediately. I haven't asked you anything yet, Stone said. You were going to, Karyna said. The word team was in there. Team means someone goes somewhere and I am a member of this team, so the implication was clearly that I might be part of the going. And I want to be clear up front that I will not be part of the going. I will be part of the staying, which is a role I have filled with tremendous dedication for 3 years, and which I intend to continue filling indefinitely. I'll go, Marsh said cheerfully. You absolutely will not, Karyna said, turning to look at him with the expression of a woman watching someone reach for a live wire. I've had 7 successful missions, Marsh said. Rico, Karyna said, and she used his first name, which she only did when she was being extremely serious. I say this with complete love and also complete terror. 7 successful missions is not a qualification. 7 successful missions is a streak, and streaks end. That is the defining characteristic of a streak. That is what makes it a streak and not just a permanent condition of the universe. What if my streak is just very long? Marsh said. Nobody's streak is that long, Karyna said. I have a spreadsheet. You have many spreadsheets, Marsh said. You have a whole file system. You have a shrine. All of which support the same conclusion, Karyna said, gesturing at the framed photograph as though it were Exhibit A. Stone leaned forward with both hands on the table, in the manner of a man attempting to reintroduce gravity into a conversation that had left the atmosphere. The station has a power failure and a possible structural breach, and we are losing time while Tesla communes with her motivational display, so I need people to focus. The mission is straightforward. Assess the damage, make any repairs within our capability, report back. Simple, fast, and I would like to have it done before I lose any more hair over it. It is not straightforward, Karyna said, pulling up her PADD, and I would like to present the graphs, starting with Graph 1, which shows the frequency pattern of the station's automated systems against the Zephyria data from last month, and I have highlighted the relevant range in red because I thought the color choice was appropriate given the circumstances. She highlighted it in red, Marsh said to Thaler in a stage whisper. She always highlights things in red, Thaler said. I highlight things in red because red means danger and danger is what I am trying to communicate, Karyna said without pausing. And if you look at graph 2, you will see that the frequency match between these two datasets is 96%, which means that the thing that almost definitely tried to wake up on Zephyria when Marsh was standing next to a Federation installation with a toolkit is almost certainly also present at this station in a low-power dormant state, waiting. As things in low-power dormant states do, for something to come along and give it a reason to stop being dormant. What kind of reason? Marsh said, now looking at the graph with slightly more attention than he had been giving it 30 seconds ago. The electromagnetic kind, Karyna said, generated by, for example, an engineering toolkit operated by, for example, a person in a red shirt standing next to a station that has not had its perimeter response protocols manually deactivated, because manual deactivation requires primary power which the station does not have. The briefing room was quiet for a moment. That's in footnote 14, Karyna added, which I have laminated and included in the packet I am about to distribute. You made packets, Stone said. I made 5 packets, Karyna said, and produced 5 identical laminated packets from under the table and distributed them around the room with the efficiency of someone who had been planning this moment for at least 12 hours. Marsh opened his packet and flipped to footnote 14 and read it, and then looked up at Karyna with an expression that was doing several things simultaneously. This is actually concerning, he said. Thank you, Karyna said. I'm not saying I'm not going, Marsh said. I know, Karyna said, with the resignation of a woman who had made peace with the fundamental nature of the universe and found it deeply irritating. I'm saying it's concerning and I'll be careful, Marsh said. Rico, Karyna said, the last time you said you'd be careful you also said the word adventure 3 times in the same sentence, which is not the vocabulary of a person recalibrating their risk threshold. I can be careful and enthusiastic at the same time, Marsh said. Name one person for whom that has historically worked out, Karyna said. Marsh opened his mouth. In a red shirt, Karyna added. Marsh closed his mouth. That's what I thought, Karyna said. Stone closed his laminated packet with the air of a man who was going to pretend the laminated packet did not exist. Tesla, are you going on this mission? I am not going on this mission, Karyna said. I am going to Deck 4 where I will operate my station with all 7 secondary windows open and the cross-reference running and the watch this files active, and I will provide better sensor coverage of that station than anyone could provide from the surface. And I will do it from a chair in front of my motivational photograph next to my small battery-operated candle, and I will be alive at the end of it. Which is my primary professional objective, and one I have met every single day for 3 years without interruption. Stone looked at her. Court-martialed Tesla. Real threat. On the table. Captain, Karyna said pleasantly, a court-martial takes place on a ship. A court-martial does not involve dormant automated perimeter systems and partially powered relay stations. A court-martial has never once in the history of Starfleet ended with someone being killed by an electromagnetic discharge in a compromised hull environment. And so yes, court-martial me, I will be there, I will be present, I will be alive and present. Which is the ideal combination of conditions, and one I intend to maintain. Stone looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Marsh. Then he looked at the laminated packet. Then he said Marsh Engineering. Delira Science. Thaler Shuttle. Tesla Deck 4, and I want that cross-reference before the shuttle clears the bay. You'll have it in 8 minutes, Karyna said, already working. Marsh stood up and tucked his laminated packet under his arm with the air of someone intending to actually read it, which Karyna noted and filed under small mercies. He paused next to her chair and looked down at her with the grin that she had catalogued under extremely annoying and also somehow reassuring. You know, he said, most people show they care about someone by, I don't know, saying nice things to them, and you show it by making them laminated packets about footnote 14. The laminated packet is waterproof, Karyna said, without looking up from her console in case of hull breach. Marsh laughed, a real full laugh, and pointed at her and said, version 10 is definitely a second photograph, and headed for the shuttle bay with his packet under his arm and his ridiculous invincible energy filling the corridor behind him. Karyna watched him go on the corridor camera feed because she had access to the corridor camera feed and she used everything available to her, and she watched him disappear around the corner, and then she turned back to her console and opened the cross-reference and got to work, and she worked fast and she worked well, and she sent the report to Stone with a minute to spare, and then she lit her small battery-operated candle and looked at her photograph of the ship and said quietly, to nobody in particular, come back, Rico. And then she pulled up every sensor feed she had, and she did not look away from any of them for a single second. Captain Fred Stone opened the ship-wide Comet 0900 with the particular tone of a captain who had a straightforward mission and wanted everyone to know it was straightforward so that nobody would have any reason to make it complicated. Attention all senior staff, the away team is beginning their approach to Relay Station 77 Alpha. Mission is proceeding nominally, all readings are within acceptable parameters. This is a routine assessment and repair operation and I expect it to be completed within the hour, Stone said, and then closed the comm with the satisfied click of a man who had just jinxed himself so thoroughly that the universe had almost certainly already started taking notes. On Deck 4, Karyna Tesla heard this announcement, looked at her 7 open secondary windows, looked at her watch this files, looked at her small battery-operated candle and said to the framed photograph of the Meridian, he said routine. The photograph did not respond, but she felt it understood. She pulled open the snack drawer, retrieved a protein bar of the good variety and got to work. The shuttle feed showed Marsh in his seat going through the laminated packet with the focused attention of someone who had decided to take it seriously, which Karyna appreciated even as she recognized that taking the packet seriously and not going to the station were two entirely different levels of commitment, and Marsh had only signed up for the former. He had a stylus out and was making notes in the margins, which was either very encouraging or the saddest thing she had ever seen, and she had not fully decided which. Marsh, she said over the engineering channel, how far are you through the packet? Page 6, Marsh said. The bit about the electromagnetic variance thresholds is genuinely interesting. Did you write this yourself, or is this lifted from the technical manual? I wrote the summary and cross-referenced it against the technical manual and 3 incident reports from other ships that encountered similar systems, Karyna said. The incident reports are in the appendix. There's an appendix, Marsh said. There are 2 appendices, Karyna said. The second one is a flow chart for abort decisions, and I would like you to spend considerable time with the flow chart. Is the flow chart also laminated? Marsh said. Everything is laminated, Karyna said. I had the machine for the whole evening. How much of the ship's laminating supplies did you use? Marsh said. A significant portion, Karyna said. I have filed a requisition for more. Focus on the flow chart. Thaler's voice came over the shuttle comm with the easy confidence of someone who had done this many times and come back every time, and had therefore developed the specific and dangerous habit of expecting to keep doing so. Station approach in 4 minutes, getting preliminary scans now, structure looks intact from the outside, power failure confirmed across all primary systems, backup power running at about 12% which is low but functional. What is the electromagnetic reading in the perimeter band? Karyna said immediately. A pause that was 2 seconds longer than she wanted it to be came back at her over the comm. It's within the range you flagged, Delira said, in the careful tone she used when she was confirming something she had specifically hoped she would not have to confirm. How far within the range? Karyna said. About 60% of the threshold you identified as the activation point, Delira said. Right, Karyna said, and opened the Watch This file and started a new sub-file that she labeled Watch This More. And what happens to that reading when Marsh starts operating the toolkit in proximity to the perimeter systems? Theoretically, it could increase, Delira said. By how much theoretically? Karyna said. Another pause. Theoretically by quite a lot, Delira said, in the tone of a scientist who had done the calculation and wished she hadn't. Fantastic, Karyna said. Marsh, are you on the flow chart yet? I'm on the flow chart, Marsh said. It's very thorough. You have 17 decision nodes, I counted. The 17th one is the most important, Karyna said. Read it to me. If you're still here reading this flow chart instead of running back to the shuttle, something has gone wrong and you should stop reading and start running, Marsh said, and she could hear the grin in it. The warm, reliable grin that she had cataloged under extremely annoying and also somehow the best sound on this ship. I want that one memorized, Karyna said. I have it memorized, Marsh said. Stop reading, start running. I've got it. Good, Karyna said. Keep it somewhere accessible. Stone's voice came over the main comm from the bridge. Tesla, how are the readings? Interesting, Karyna said, in the tone she used when she meant concerning. Define interesting, Stone said, in the tone he used when he already knew what she meant and was hoping she would say something different. The perimeter band readings are at 60% of my flagged threshold, Karyna said, which means they are technically not at the threshold, which means everything is technically fine, which means this is precisely the kind of situation where everything remains technically fine right up until it is suddenly and completely not fine, and I want that observation logged. It's logged, Stone said. Everything you say is logged, Tesla. You have been logging things for 3 years. And I have been correct about them for 3 years, Karyna said pleasantly. Keep monitoring, Stone said. I wasn't planning to do anything else, Karyna said. The shuttle docked with the relay station at 0917 and Karyna noted the time and the electromagnetic readings and the backup power levels and the structural scan results, and opened a new mission log entry and typed everything down with the methodical focus of someone who had been keeping records long enough to know that the records always mattered eventually. Docking confirmed, Thaler said. Marsh, Delira, you're clear to board. Boarding now, Marsh said, with the cheerful energy of someone stepping into a completely ordinary situation, which Karyna noted from Deck 4 with her 7 windows open and her candle lit and her cross-reference running and her hands very still on the console. The interior feed from the station came online as Marsh and Delira moved through the airlock and Karyna pulled it up on window 3 and looked at the inside of relay station 77 Alpha and noticed, in the first 4 seconds of looking, several things she did not like, which she catalogued in order of how much she did not like them. The emergency lighting was running at half its rated level, which meant backup power was degrading faster than the external scans had indicated. There was a panel on the far wall with a small amber light on it, blinking in the pattern she recognized from the technical manual appendix as the standby indicator for a Class 4 perimeter response module. The amber light was blinking slightly faster than the standby rate specified in the technical manual, which meant it was not fully in standby, but in something that was technically standby, while clearly paying close attention to everything happening in the room. And Marsh was walking directly toward it with his toolkit open and a stylus behind his ear and the expression of a man who had 7 successful missions and a laminated packet and complete serene confidence in both. Marsh, Karyna said over the engineering channel with the calm precision of someone choosing every word with great care, there is a panel on the wall to your left with an amber light on it, and I need you to not go near it. I see it, Marsh said, glancing over at it with the easy familiarity of someone greeting a known quantity. Perimeter Response Module, Class 4, it's in standby, I've seen these before. It is in something adjacent to standby, Karyna said, and I need you to give it a very wide berth and start your assessment on the opposite side of the station. The primary fault is in the junction right next to the module, Marsh said, pulling up his scanner with the efficiency of someone who had already assessed the room and made a plan. I can have this done in 6 minutes if I start here. The far relay adds another 20 minutes to the job, and we'd still have to come back to this junction anyway. Rico, Karyna said, and used his first name, which was her tell, and she knew it, and she used it anyway because this was exactly the moment it existed for. I need you to go to the far relay first, and I need you to trust me on this. There was a brief pause during which she could see on window 3 that Marsh was looking at the perimeter module, and then looking at the primary fault junction, and then looking at the module again with the expression of a person genuinely weighing things up rather than just proceeding, which she noted and appreciated and which was not going to be enough. It's in standby, Karyna, he said gently, like a person being careful with someone they are fond of. The light is amber, amber is standby. I've worked around these units before and amber means they're asleep. The amber is blinking at 1.3 times the standard standby rate, Karyna said. How did you even clock that, Marsh said, with what sounded like genuine admiration. Because I am watching everything at all times, Karyna said. That is my entire thing, Rico, that is the system, please go to the far relay. Another pause, shorter this time. 6 minutes, Marsh said. I'll be done and back on the shuttle before anything has time to think about waking up, I promise, and I've got node 17 right here. He tapped his temple with one finger, visible on the helmet camera feed. Karyna looked at her framed photograph of the Meridian. The photograph looked back at her with the absolute unhelpfulness of an object that had never been anything other than an object, no matter how much symbolic weight she had placed on it. Read me node 17, she said. Stop reading, start running, Marsh said, and there was the grin again, warm and reliable and completely infuriating. I know it, I've got it, 6 minutes and I'm back on the shuttle. More careful than that, Karyna said, for what felt like the 10,000th time in 3 years, and watched him cross to the fault junction on window 3 and open the panel and get to work. For 4 minutes and 29 seconds, everything was fine. The amber light blinked at its slightly elevated rate. The electromagnetic readings on Karyna's console sat at 64% of the threshold and stayed there. Marsh worked with the fast, precise efficiency of someone who was genuinely excellent at his job, narrating findings to Delira in the low, focused tone of a professional doing professional work. And Karyna watched every window and ate the second half of her protein bar and breathed carefully and thought about node 17. At 4 minutes and 30 seconds, Marsh's toolkit produced a calibration pulse that interacted with the junction's electromagnetic field in the specific way that Karyna had described in her report, and summarized in her packet and highlighted in red in both graphs and explained in footnote 14 and illustrated on the flow chart with a clearly labeled decision node. And the perimeter response module's amber light went from blinking to solid, and then from amber to red. And the electromagnetic reading on Karyna's console went from 64% to 147% in the time it takes to blink. Marsh, Karyna said very quietly, node 17. I see it, Marsh said, and his voice had changed completely, all the grin gone, replaced with the clean, focused efficiency of someone who was excellent at their job, and was now applying that excellence to leaving as fast as possible. I'm going, moving now. Delira airlock, Karyna said. Moving, Delira said. Thaler emergency undock prep, Karyna said. Ready, Thaler said. On window 3, Karyna watched Marsh close his toolkit with one hand while he was already turning and moving toward the airlock, and he was fast. He was genuinely fast. He was exactly as good as he had always said he was, and none of that was going to matter because of something that was not in the report or the packet or the graphs or the footnotes or the flow chart or any of the 17 nodes or the 2 appendices or anything in the watch this file system, which was the coolant pipe. The coolant pipe ran along the ceiling directly above the perimeter response module and had been leaking slowly for an unknown number of the 14 months since anyone had last visited the station. And the coolant had been pooling in the housing of the module with the patient industriousness of a liquid that had nowhere else to be. And when the module activated and its housing temperature spiked to operational levels, the coolant vaporized in approximately 1/3 of a second and triggered the station's fire suppression system, which was running on 12% backup power. Which meant that instead of a controlled suppression response, what came out of the ceiling was a single catastrophic pressurized discharge of fire suppressant foam that dropped straight down from directly above with the focused intent of a thing that had been waiting a long time to do exactly this. It hit Marsh from above at full pressure from a distance of approximately 2 meters. Rico Marsh, Ensign, Security and Engineering, 7 successful away missions, red shirt, 23 years old, owner of a grin that could light up a corridor and a habit of volunteering before the captain finished his sentences, went down under approximately 40 liters of fire suppressant foam and did not move. The station went quiet. The amber light on the perimeter module, its business concluded, returned to standby and resumed blinking at its slightly elevated rate with the absolute serenity of a system that had done exactly what it was designed to do and had no opinion about the consequences. Karyna sat at her station on deck 4 with her hands flat on the console and looked at window 3 and did not say anything because there was nothing to say that was going to change what window 3 was showing her. Delira, she said eventually, in a voice that was very steady because she was making it very steady, status. Delira was already there, already kneeling, and the sound of her voice when she answered was the sound of a scientist who had run out of detachment. He's down, the discharge hit him from directly above at full pressure. There's a significant head injury. He's not conscious. I need Thaler. I'm coming, Thaler said, and the airlock opened and his boots were loud on the station floor, and then there were 2 voices over the comm and neither of them were saying the things that people said when things were going to be all right. Stone's voice came over the main comm from the bridge, quiet in the way that voices went quiet when authority stopped being the relevant quality. Tesla, what are you reading? I'm reading that the suppression system discharged directly above Marsh's position when the perimeter module activated, Karyna said, and that the discharge was caused by a coolant leak in the pipe above the module housing, and that the coolant leak is not in the technical manual and not in the incident reports and not in the footnotes and not in the flow chart and not in anything I had. And I want you to know that because I need you to know that I looked at everything I could find, and the coolant pipe was not in any of it. Taslow, Stone said. I need you to know that, Karyna said, because I need it on the record that I looked at everything. It's on the record, Stone said quietly. It's on the record, Tesla. Thaler's voice came over the comm and said the thing that Thaler's voice said, and Delira confirmed it in the flat, careful tone of someone delivering a finding they would rather not deliver. And Karyna sat at her station on deck 4 and looked at her 7 secondary windows and her watch, this files and her framed photograph of the Meridian and her small battery-operated candle, and she did not say anything for a long time. After a while, she opened her mission log and found the last entry, the one she had typed that morning before the shuttle departed. And she read what she had written, which was Mission 49, away team departing 0917, all variables consistent with projected risk profile, Marsh as the packet. He read the flow chart, node 17 is memorized, and she sat with that for a moment and then she typed underneath it, in the same steady methodical way she typed everything, Marsh R. Did not return. Coolant leak above perimeter module not previously documented, not in any available survey or maintenance record. Suppression discharge on module activation. He was moving. He had node 17. He was fast. The coolant pipe was not on any chart I had. I looked at everything I could find. She stopped typing. She looked at the candle. Then she opened a new document and titled it at the top and stared at the title for a moment because it was the only title it could possibly have, which was the Marsh Protocol, and she started writing, and she wrote everything. The frequency patterns and the footnotes and the coolant pipe and the suppression system and the backup power levels and the laminated packet and all 17 nodes and the 2 appendices and everything she had found and everything she had missed. And she wrote it all down in the same careful, methodical way. She wrote everything because the writing was what she could do and the records were what she had. And if she put it all in the record, then maybe the next person who read the footnotes would find something she hadn't found, would see something she hadn't seen, would know about the coolant pipe before they got on the shuttle instead of after. She filed it with Stone. She filed it with Starfleet Command. She filed it with every department head on the Meridian. She filed it in the engineering archive where people who read footnotes would find it. Then she sat back in her chair and looked at her framed photograph of the ship and thought about Rico Marsh reading the flow chart on the shuttle with a stylus behind his ear and notes in the margins. And she thought about him tapping his temple and saying, "Stop reading, start running, I've got it." And she thought about the grin, and she thought about him saying, "You show you care by making laminated packets." And she sat with all of that for a long time. Eventually, she reached into the snack drawer and found the protein bar she had been saving, and she put it back without opening it and closed the drawer. She pulled up the spreadsheet. She found the entry. She read the words one more time. Then she put on her red shirt, which she did every morning, which was a small deliberate act of something she had never quite been able to name. And she sat back down at her station and she opened her files and she kept watching because watching was what she did. And because somebody on the ship had to, and because Rico Marsh had read the flow chart and memorized node 17 and gone anyway, and the very least she could do was make sure the next person who went had better information than he did. Outside, the stars held their positions with the vast indifferent patience of things that had been there before any of this and would be there long after. And Relay Station 77 Alpha sat dark and quiet in the middle of them, amber light blinking, coolant dripping, entirely unbothered. Karyna Tesla updated her files. She did not go anywhere. She was extremely alive. She found, on the whole, that this remained her preferred condition, and she intended to keep it that way. And she was going to make absolutely certain that the next version of the laminated packet included a note about coolant pipes. Version 10 was going to need a much bigger rug. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing so you never miss a story. And if you want to support the show, leaving a review on your favorite podcast app really helps us grow. Hope to see you next time.